welcome to Best Laid Plans. This is your host, Sarah Hart-Unger, and this is a podcast where we talk all things planning and planning adjacent. Today, I'm going to start by following up on the task management episode we had 2 weeks ago. I was going to do a Q&A today, but I couldn't help sharing this roundup of awesome tips that you guys sent in regarding your own task management. So we're going to start with that. And then I've just been doing a lot of reflection lately on tracking. I actually did an episode on this topic way back in the day, but I think it's time to revisit it. So I think you will kind of be interested in maybe some of my new revelations on that topic. Before we begin, I want to mention something that I've discovered, which is that you can actually leave a comment or a question for this show on Spotify. I know not everybody listens on Spotify. In fact, I think it's about between 10 and 12% of you based on the stats that I get, but that still is a solid chunk of people. And perhaps if you now know that you can leave comments or questions on Spotify, maybe that will be a more convenient option for some of you, but I actually didn't know they were there. So this is partly an apology. If you had left me a question or a comment like way back in the day, months ago, I didn't answer it because I didn't even know how to get to the section where you can answer. But lately I figured it out. And I just wanted to let you all know that that is one easy way to leave a note on an episode or share a question or things like that. So if you want to play with that with today's episode, go ahead and do it. I also accept questions as always via my email, which is my name, Sarah with an H, .hart, H-A-R-T, .unger, U-N-G-E-R @gmail.com. And I will be coming up with a Q&A episode before the end of February. So please go ahead and get your questions in. All right, so we're going to start with the first half of this episode, which is follow-up from our airtight task management episode from 2 weeks ago. I will link to that just in case you're a new listener and haven't seen that. But in that episode, I talk all about the tenets of successful airtight task management, the way of keeping track of all the things you have to do in a way that does not stress you out and in a way that allows you to see the things you have to do at the right moment, which can be more complex than it sounds like. But there are many strategies that can help. And in that episode, I did ask for listeners to go ahead and share their ways of doing things. And I got so many of them that I wanted to be sure to share them with you today. So the first 2 tips come from Julie and Molly. And both of these tips center around use of Apple Reminders app. Now, of course, I know not everyone is in the Apple universe, but lots of you are, or at least I know lots of you listen to this podcast via Apple Podcasts. So I know that many of you do have iPhone-type devices. So Julie writes, I have an iPhone and use voice to text to set a reminder in the Reminders app. It's so fast. Then I just make sure to check reminders every couple of days or at least weekly. Like you, if it's something I need to do the same day, I text myself. She also notes that she hates putting texts in email because she gets so much email already and they tend to get lost. So texting herself, kind of like I mentioned, but also this use of the Reminders app. And another listener, Molly, kind of said the same thing, but also had another really fun note in her email. So I'm going to share what she wrote. She said, I was thinking about the question about on-the-fly tasks and quick capture. I was really eager to hear this because I had just been thinking about all the things that come to me when I'm driving or in the shower and I can't write them down. The best solution I have found for the car, at least, I can see why this might not work as well in the shower, is the voice reminders feature on the iPhone. So same thing as Julie said above. She says, on my iPhone, I'll just ask Siri to remind me to insert task with either a date and a time or a location. Example, arriving at work on or Sunday at 3 p.m. And then basically whenever she's in a place to do that task or put it in a planner. So this is super interesting because I definitely did not know that Reminders was capable of doing this location-specific pop-up or reminding. So she has an example here and she writes, this voice command feature has saved my brain from the fatigue of trying to hold on to it by the time I can get to paper. It's really great for lists and things that are location bound. For example, she'll say, remind me to get envelopes when I arrive at Staples in Newington, New Hampshire. And sure enough, when she pulls up at Staples, her phone knows, I guess we all are being surveilled in that manner by our devices, and the app will actually remind her to get envelopes. Super, super interesting. Especially, I guess I would want to make sure this worked 100% of the time, because if this kind of thing worked 80% of the time, you would not trust it and it would not be so useful. But if you've learned that it's really reliable, and I guess especially for lower stakes things like getting envelopes, that could be incredibly useful. as well as the idea that you could say, remind me at this exact time to do this. I already have timers set on my phone. For example, my kids get eye drops at 8:45 at night, and I would 100% forget to give those eye drops if I did not have an alarm going off. But this Reminders app feature takes things another step further, so I think I may start to play with that myself as well. So thank you so much for these tips, Julie and Molly. Then we have another tip from Lindsay. She writes, and this is a little bit simpler, but sounds like it still works. I have a tip for the person that wrote in about random tasks that pop up all day and need to be captured. I have an Apple Note that's just called To Do, and literally anything that pops up or into my head, even if it's something that's weeks off, I just drop it on that note. I am very much a pen and paper girl too, but when I'm out and about, I don't always have my paper planner with me. Then at the end of the day or the next morning, I open this list and plug it all in where it needs to go. Even long-term ideas like a vacation I want to take in a year, I'll drop into my good ideas so I see it later. It has totally fixed the problem of things having to live in my brain and me worrying about forgetting them. Most of these tasks wouldn't take more than 5 minutes, but when they pop into my brain, I can't always get them done. And so this really makes sure nothing falls through the cracks. Have a great day. I love this, Lindsay. Super simple. And once again, you're using something that's quick to pull up and you have a ritual where you know you're going to look at it so you can get these tasks where they need to be. What a great on-the-fly method, and even simpler than if someone's already using Apple Notes and doesn't want to add another app to their system, or they're largely paper-based but just need a digital entry solution. This might be a fantastic one. We also got a note about the app To Do, spelled Teux, from Lori. That is another one. I mean, I've definitely heard of Todoist many times, and we've talked about that one on this podcast, but apparently To Do has a very clean interface and is very simple. So that's another one to check out. And then finally, we will finish this segment with a totally analog method that a reader sent me. She writes, task management for me in a busy financial position long ago involved a set notebook that was just a spiral notebook which stayed at the workspace. I put everything in the notebook, and as things were processed, I drew a diagonal line through the section of the page that information covered. Each section was separate from the other sections by a solid line drawn out from the spine to the edges. So it does not get any simpler than that, everyone. She just has a notebook. It's with her all the time. She describes this as something that sits on the desk, but other people I've seen carry around little tiny notebooks that fit in a bag or a pocket. And again, you can scribble anything down that pops into your mind as long as you have a set processing. And it's really interesting that she specifically mentions, when I'm done processing these things that pop into my mind, they get a diagonal line. I know I'm done with them. That is key because that means you're not going to leave them behind in your capture tool and they're getting where they need to be. So all of these strategies have commonality. They're quick, they're reliable, and these people know they are going to look at these apps or tools on a regular basis. So thank you guys so much for sharing them. I hope that provides ideas for anyone else that is struggling with the on-the-fly task capture. And of course, you can keep your ideas coming as well. So we're going to take a quick break. And in the second half of the episode, I am going to deliver my new hot take on tracking all the things. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Green Chef. It's February, and hopefully any nutrition goals you had for the year are going strong. If you're looking to make things extra convenient with a meal kit that really delivers on its nutritional promises, I highly recommend checking out Green Chef. Their boxes are filled with real, farm-sourced ingredients, including certified organic produce and responsibly sourced proteins and seafood. Their meals will help you reach your wellness goals with options like Mediterranean, high protein, high fiber, plant-based, and more, all designed to support healthier habits. I can personally attest to how delicious these meals are too. I love all the seasonal flavors, and my kids really like them as well. Right now, go to greenchef.com/bestlaidgraza and use code bestlaidgraza to get started with 50% off Green Chef and a free Graza olive oil set in your second and third boxes. This 50% offer is only available for a limited time, so don't wait. That's code bestlaidgraza at greenchef.com/bestlaidgraza. Today's episode is brought to us support from Mint Mobile. It can be tempting to stick with what you have just because it works, meaning you might not change your phone plan even though you're paying a much higher price than is necessary. But if you can break through that inertia, you'll get a much better deal at Mint Mobile. One of my close family members did just that, and she is thrilled to be getting the same product at a much lower price. You get to bring your own phone and number, Activate with eSIM in minutes and start saving immediately with no long-term contracts and no hassle. Ready to stop paying more than you have to? New customers can make the switch today. And for a limited time, get unlimited premium wireless for just $15 per month. Switch now at mintmobile.com/BLP. That's mintmobile.com/BLP. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Only 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. Additional terms apply. See mintmobile.com. Today's episode is brought to you with support from IXL. We're in that long stretch of school between the beginning of the year and spring break, and this is the perfect time to reinforce foundations and help your kids build confidence with their learning. IXL makes it easy to keep routine steady and make learning progress visible, even on the days that feel harder. IXL offers interactive practice across math, language arts, science, and social studies from pre-K through 12th grade. IXL personalizes learning for each child, keeps them engaged, and gives parents clear insight into progress. My kids have used IXL for years to learn and reinforce concepts, and it can be used as enrichment, review, or part of a homeschool curriculum. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And Best Laid Plans listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/plans. Visit IXL.com/plans, PLANS, to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. All right, we are back, and I am going to talk in this latter half of the episode about tracking things. I actually did a full episode on this topic back in, I'm going to guess it was 2021 or 2022. It was in the second year of the podcast. So yeah, it's going to be either early 2022 or late 2021. And the episode was called Tracking the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Because there are some things, and some people can feel very pressured by tracking too many things. And so I definitely came down during that episode on the side of maybe less is more, like choose the things that you want to track and really be careful not to put too much pressure on yourself by tracking too many things or approaching your tracking with judgment. But I have to say, as time has gone by, I have perhaps come around to view tracking as more and more useful than I did in the past. And I'm not sure what changed there, or if it's just more that I've experimented with different ways of tracking that don't necessarily add too much pressure, as well as really being very careful not to kind of color my tracking with any sort of air of judgment, but more see it as informational. But I would say, if anything, I am leaning more on the tracking is helpful for us side than I ever did before. And so I thought I'd share some of that with you guys. So for me, I feel like life is not just about improvement. However, there is something human in the quest to do things better, fit in more, or have growth in different areas of life. Even if that growth is just, I want to have a really solid relationship with my family. And I don't want to say the word just there. That could be the ultimate goal of someone, to really support their kids or be there for their parents or just have their relationships grow. Or maybe you have goals that are more around athletic pursuits or getting better at music or in art. Maybe there are work-focused goals. Maybe they're all of the above. Or maybe you are suffering from health things and you just want to feel better. But no matter what it is, many, many humans do exist on some sort of arc, some sort of journey of sorts. And I think that's honestly natural. Now, there's definitely some people who reject that and feel that that is something that might be wrong with society, that we're always trying to improve things. But I, as a person, haven't necessarily found that it's a negative. I don't think it's healthy to fixate on one thing and have a very specific outcome. But looking for growth in different areas, for me, has been more of a positive than a negative. And when I read books about meaning or flourishing, growth is often mentioned. And growth and development, or the pursuit of excellence or the pursuit of improvement, is something that is so kind of consistent across cultures and across different things that we do, that I guess I think discounting it all with the story of, oh, all of that is bad and it's capitalism or it's bad for us or just a story we're telling ourselves, it just doesn't totally mesh with how I've experienced the world. And also, again, many experts in sort of the positive psychology fields and what they say about what helps give people's lives meanings or helps them flourish. So yeah, I think as humans, we can often tend to tell ourselves stories about why we're not accomplishing something or why we feel bad or why we're struggling. And we can be slow to actually look at data. Kind of a fun fact, most people don't know how tall they are. So this might not seem like it's relevant, but I guess my point is people go through their lives with one impression of something and are not very quick to revise that or confirm it. And the reason I know that many people don't know how tall they are is because I see Kids for Growth in the clinic. And one of the things we always do is measure the parents. And invariably, I would say both genders, but especially men will say, "What? I'm 5'10"? I'm 6 feet. Like, what are you talking about?" Because everyone remembers the absolute tallest height that was given to them at one point. And part of that's natural because, we assume that we grow, we assume we don't shrink. So any height that's given to you that's the highest, you're like, okay, well, that's what I've reached. But measurement is not perfect. It's very easy to make mistakes. There's a lot of estimating that happens in different places or clinics. Or maybe you just, at 16 were at the DMV and they just decided you wanted to put 5'11" on your driver's license. They actually don't check, at least in the states where I've been. So people can actually remember a fact that they feel is very true about themselves, but when they actually stand up against an accurate measuring device, they'll find out they're an inch or two shorter. And that obviously doesn't necessarily matter at all, but it could have implications for how tall they think their child should be or what they feel an acceptable height is. And we are getting way outside of the realm of this podcast and this topic. But my point is, many people don't get objective data about themselves. And that's a little trivial thing. But then there are things that might matter more. Like you might feel very overwhelmed at the time you spend on screens, but you might not know exactly how much you're spending on different screens or different apps. You might not know how long email processing takes you, how much protein or sugar you take in, how much you sleep, how much you're spending or earning, what you're doing with your free time, how many hours you work, or how well you're following through with habit goals you set for yourself. And I am not in any way stating, oh, everyone should track all of those things all of the time. I mean, that would be coming down really, really hard on the side of pro tracking. And I definitely don't think that that needs to be a reality for most people. Of course, if it does work for you, that is awesome. But I do think if there are areas of life that you're focusing on or struggling with or interested in developing, that it can often be really helpful to do a little bit more tracking than you're doing right now. And I feel like this has been a year for me of doing more tracking than I've done in prior years. And overall, it's definitely been a positive and hasn't taken up as much time or mental bandwidth than I maybe expected it to. I mean, part of that is technology, and our wearables can do a lot of this tracking for us. And even if we're taking a moment to look at numbers and put them into our own systems for analysis, that can be pretty darn quick. So my example here would be the Opal app, which I've mentioned previously. I use it now to track my screen time because I find it much more accurate for giving me useful stats about what I'm doing with my phone compared to, say, the Apple screen time feature. I was so tired of being dinged for using like navigation on my phone. And now with Opal, I don't see that because you're able to set various apps as neutral. And so like for me, it doesn't take very long to just have that app open. And even just taking a glance each morning at how many minutes I spent on my phone and on what takes just mere seconds, and recording it maybe 10 seconds more. And so I've actually added to my morning routine. I know my morning routine's pretty long, so adding things it can be a double-edged sword. But I realized that I was sort of spending the first part of my morning routine filling out stuff from the prior day. And I have just sort of named it and decided that I like to start my morning routine with kind of a moment of reckoning. And I'm using that tongue in cheek because I'm not judging myself, but I take a minute to look back on all the things that I wanted to track for the prior day and record them in my various planners and the different ways that I like to. And I find it not only kind of helpful and motivating, but also just fun. And it actually doesn't take as long as one might think, given that there are a few metrics that I'm writing down. And the things that I've found out have been not huge things, but they've been helpful things, like how my moods tend to track with my cycle. I started to notice that not only do I, not love the time before my cycle kicks in, but mid-cycle, there's definitely some increased anger. And I looked it up, and peri-ovulatory rage is apparently a thing. So, wow, I can't believe, I'm discovering that in my mid-40s. would have been maybe helpful to know earlier. But yeah, I've only discovered that because I started more carefully tracking my moods and how they went with my cycle. Or I started tracking protein using a nutrition app called Cal AI, which I have gone kind of up and down on nutrition tracking because I don't like having to be like persnickety and measuring things and stuff. But this app does make things easier and probably is a little bit more about estimates than perfection. But for me, that's good. And it's been helpful to help me see, oh, this is how much protein makes me feel my best throughout the day and keeps my energy up. Or things like tracking calling friends each week has been helpful. And I'm not like, again, like beating myself up if I didn't make a phone call, but I can notice how making a couple of calls to friends and family helps me feel connected and is really, really fun. And I'm not sure I would have placed as much of a value on it if I hadn't started paying a bit more attention. So yeah, I guess my summary of this episode is that 2026 me is a little bit more pro on the tracking side than 2022 me. Now, I 100% feel like there are phases where it just doesn't make sense. If I had wanted to track all the things, so to speak, after my cardiac incident last year, it would have made no sense. If you're going through something very emotional or very tough, I think that is the time to be very, very choosy about the things that you're looking at, only the things that are going to serve you. But when things are calm and you're in sort of a life building phase or in one of those phases where you just feel like things are business as usual and you can do it without judgment because you want the information to work for you and not against you, I think it can be really kind of helpful. And I do think that kind of the counterpoint of tracking is to make sure you have a time and to make sure that you do it. So with planning, having great tools is great, having great rituals is great, and thinking about where they fit in is also key. And that is also the case with any sort of tracking, especially if you want to do any sort of like formal analysis. And I wouldn't even call it formal, but I have started to build hey, what did I do last month? What does my tracking tell me? Kind of a roundup at the end of each month. And I even like posted that on the blog. So I'll link to what that looks like how many books read and, did I make good on my promise to myself to have date nights with my husband and things like that. So I've started building that on the monthly level. There is no reason this has to be monthly versus weekly versus whenever it makes sense to you. But thinking through rituals as to when will you actually go over the data you have collected can also be an idea that might be helpful to some. And I'm going to end with a really fun example of someone tracking something that she emailed me about that is not about drudgery or shoulds or have-tos, but it's something that's actually brought more joy into her life. And this comes from another person named Sarah, who is a martial artist and a yoga expert. And she writes, following up on the episode in which you shared about the lady who has an Excel sheet to track how often she connects with friends, I do something similar using the vertical yearly calendar at the front of most planners these days. She notes that last year she was using a Take a Note B6 weekly planner, and this year she's using a Muji B6 horizontal weekly. And she has a color-coded and sticker key. She has a list with the friends she wants to see or call at least monthly, and she gives herself a sticker if she does it, corresponding to the color of each friend's favorite color. I love that. And then she'll also write down initials or first names of people she's just met or only sees rarely but wants to keep in her life. And then at the end of each month, she has an alert on her phone to schedule the get-together she wants to have on a monthly basis. So with this system, she can see at a glance and know immediately if she hasn't connected with a friend in too long and give herself credit for the friends that she has met up with. And she notes that thanks to this system, she noticed she only saw a dear friend twice last year, and it gave them the data they needed to make sure it didn't happen again. And she even noted that on the day she wrote me this email, she saw that friend on that very day. She even also noted that she tends to be the planner amongst her friends and that they very much appreciate that, and introduced me to a new term, which is that as some families may have a matriarch, she is the friendriarch of her circle and proud of it. I love that. I love this use case for tracking because I think it can get a bad rap when it comes to judgment and people thinking that means being very strict with yourself. And this is an example of the exact opposite, how this listener uses tracking to bring more joy and more fun into her life. And so I hope this example kind of gets you even more maybe excited about figuring out what would work to track for you. And I also just wanted to share this person's website since Sarah shared it with me. It's Sarah with an H, B-A-D-A-T, Richardson.com. So I'll link to that in the show notes as well. Sarah, thank you for that fantastic example. All right, well, I'll be back next week with an interview. I know that's actually happening because I am recording it right after I record this episode, and it's going to be a really fun one with someone that has lots of her own logistics to handle. So stay tuned for that. And then after that will be our Q&A. So again, get me those questions via email. You can use Spotify, give that one a try, or via text. I'll put that number in the show notes too. Have a wonderful week. Happy planning. And if you think of something that you are tracking that has served you, you can let me know that as well.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.